Welcome to our Savvy series. I'm Catherine Magana here with Rachel Ivanovich. And if you'd like to set up a complimentary strategy call with us, you can reach us at 760-692-5190. And today we wanted to go ahead and continue the conversation on retirement. We've been kind of going through some things to avoid and things that come up when you talk about retirement. And a couple mistakes that we wanted to kind of share and focus on a little bit today was one, ignoring workplace retirement plans, and then also not updating your beneficiary information, which are really two key things to consider when you look at retirement. And so I guess we'll kind of kick off with, not updating your beneficiary information and kind of some of the impacts and things of not doing that and how that would affect you.
Yeah, so this is very common and could be a very common costly mistake. So you definitely want to be checking with your financial institution who your beneficiaries are on your different accounts. Typically, we want you to be looking at this after major life events. So if you get married, if you get divorced, unfortunately, births, deaths, these are really important times to be checking who your beneficiaries are. They're classic cases. Basically, you were married to one person and had your spouse listed as the beneficiary, and then you get divorced, unfortunately, and forget to take your former spouse off, and you think that your will would take over, but unfortunately it doesn't. Yeah. The beneficiary forms trumps that last will and testament, so you definitely want to make sure that you're regularly updating your beneficiary forms. And another thing I've seen with clients, unfortunately, is oftentimes there might be an administrator error where they change their system, and the beneficiaries just get deleted.
Oh wow!
And
okay.
Yes.
So you want something documented.
So you want something
even
documented.
Even if it's online, you want to have
yes.
save that.
So make sure you're saving those beneficiary forms. If maybe they unfortunately delete them, then you can reproduce that form and show, look, this is actually who I had named.
So as we're talking about beneficiaries, there are primary beneficiaries and contingent beneficiaries. Yes. Primary beneficiaries, usually if you're married, which most often you have your spouse as the primary.
And the spouse has to sign off if you name someone else.
Yes. And so those are some things, and there's some reasons why, you do have your spouse for rollovers and just different things for
and
later
tax
planning.
Yes.
But then one of the areas that I think gets overlooked occasionally is the contingent beneficiary. So the contingent beneficiary is if something happens to the primary that you have in place contingent. And obviously you would hate to see something happen to both, if you're married, both you and your spouse, but if something does happen, then you want to have contingent in place. And so that's something that tends to get overlooked occasionally. So just make sure, do you have a contingent in place? And over the last couple months, one of the items that came up was, can you put a minor as a contingent beneficiary? Yes. And that comes up, pretty
very tricky.
Yes. And so you want to make sure you understand that and also how much are you talking about, and because obviously you have, if you have guardians or something happens to both, individuals, then obviously having the minors in place and looking at what that looks like.
But one of the reasons that it is a costly mistake for if you don't have a beneficiary, and oftentimes when I'm doing someone's taxes, I'll see their IRA 5498, which is the form that shows their account balance, and at the bottom there's no beneficiary. And the reason this is costly is that if you haven't named anyone, it will have to go through probate, and that costs a lot of money. So in order to avoid that, make sure that you are indeed, it's not hard to name a beneficiary.
So
it's
just
a pretty simple process.
Just something to detail you want to pay attention to.
Yes.
And then another thing would be not taking advantage of your employer-sponsored plan. So
correct.
If your company offers a 401k plan, are you eligible? Is there a match? And and if you haven't contributed to the plan, then make sure that you have access. And usually there's some different enrollment periods, but I think that's one area that I think potentially there's some free money on the table and seeing what that looks like.
Well, in general, if you're working as an employee, there are a lot of benefits that are available. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot that you can do if you're just a W-2 employee. In terms of tax planning, you can't write off a lot of things. Oftentimes people say, well, can I write off my home office? Can I write off the cost of my computer and my cell phone, et cetera? But if you're an employee, unfortunately, you don't have that luxury to do that, or that tax savings. So what your employer offers, so you definitely want to be looking at, does your employer offer dependent care? And that's money that you can put into a savings account, and that money then can be used to pay for childcare, and it's basically tax-free money. So just like you were saying with with retirement plans, also look to see what other benefits. Maybe there's a health savings account available, so you can put money, tax-free money aside, and it's actually triple tax advantage.
Yeah, because if you use it later for health benefits, then it
It's
comes
free.
out tax-free.
Yes,
So yeah,
exactly.
that's definitely
And
a
it
good
grows tax
benefit.
deferred, so it's definitely something. So during the enrollment period, if you're a new employee, make sure that you're reading everything carefully and signing up for all the benefits that are available to you.
And then if you have your own company, then that's where some other planning comes into
Exactly.
place. If you're a small business, there's retirement plans, safe harbor plans, simple plans, or if you are kind of a solo entrepreneur, there's solo 401ks or SEP IRAs. There's a lot of different ways to save, which obviously as you do your tax and tax planning, those are some things that come up to see what are ways that you can save on your taxes and also save for your retirement.
And not only that, that's a great thing that you're mentioning that right now, because we are right in the middle, right in the heart of tax
Yes.
season. Corporate deadline's coming up in about 2 days. You have until the due date of the tax return to make the contribution for the prior year. And if you extend your corporate or LLC or partnership return, you have until September 15th of the current year to fund for the prior year.
Nice.
So you have all that time to, and hopefully you've funded it earlier, but you do have, just like the match, if you're an employee, there's kind of a profit share component that you can add to your retirement planning as a self-employed individual.
Yep. So once again, these are just some things to think about. Make sure that you have your beneficiaries in place and make sure you're saving for retirement. So I was just up in Sacramento with the Financial Planning Association of California in San Diego. And a couple bills got brought up. Obviously, when there's bills, there's thousands of bills like that come across the table in Sacramento. But there were two that really tied to financial literacy that really kind of hit home for me. One is AB 1871, and one is AB 2927. AB 1871 does provide financial literacy for ages grades 7 to 12. And then AB 2927 is suggesting a semester of personal finance before graduating, which is in 2029 to 2030. And so it's interesting because that's here in California, but there are across the U.S., there's actually been 12 bills that have been passed in the different states. And so as we're kind of talking about kind of finance and money, and what we hear from clients, especially through some of the workshops, is we never talked about money growing up, or we never had these conversations. And so to me, financial literacy is very important. And yes, if these bills don't go through, there are some other resources, but I definitely think providing personal finance to kids is really, really important.
I think it could be a game changer,
Yeah.
honestly, and not just for children, but also for their adult parents, to really spark those conversations hopefully at the dinner table, or maybe in the car when you're driving to the soccer game or football game or whatever. But definitely be having those conversations with your kids about money and compound interest and retirement.
Yeah, so I think it's important, and obviously, like you said, the legacy planning for the future. And so that ties into, we do have our workshop coming up. Our Retirement by Design workshop will be on March 28th. We're having a lunch and learn.
By popular demand.
Yes. We're going to do it one more time. We've had a lot of interest, and so we're going to bring it back for lunch. So hopefully you can join us for that. So until next time, thank you for joining us, and remember to savvy up. Please stay tuned for important regulatory disclosures.
Savvy Women Wealth Management is an SEC registered investment advisor. The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security. It is only intended to provide education about the financial industry and how we may be able to assist. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult your financial advisor prior to investing. Any past performance discussed during this program is no guarantee of future results. As always, please remember investing involves risk and possible loss of principal capital. Tax considerations presented may not be appropriate for every individual circumstance. A tax professional should be consulted before making any decisions about your tax liability.